One thing I was hoping to achieve for this dive series was continue to expand the number of people that have gone down to the bottom of the ocean. It was shocking to me, no woman had ever been down. And Dr. Kathryn Sullivan definitely seems like the right person. She was the first American woman to spacewalk. She has a PhD in ocean-related studies, so she's just the right person.
Control, this is the LF. How do you read?
I read you loud and clear.
Roger. We have a secure hatch. We have life support engaged, and we have a green board.
LF, this is SO. You're clear to start pump and dive. Godspeed.
Surface, LF, present depth, 10914. At bottom, repeat, at bottom.
Well, hello to our audience. My name is Michael Conathan. I'm the Executive Director of the Aspen High Seas Initiative, which is a program of the Aspen Institute that focuses on protecting the ocean and raising awareness of issues of importance in ocean conservation and expanding protection for our shared global ocean. And I'm incredibly excited to be joined today by two people, the two people who have most recently visited the deepest point in the ocean, the Mariana Trench. We have Dr. Kathryn Sullivan and Victor Vescovo, who recently returned several days ago from a dive to about almost 36,000 feet below the surface of the Earth to Challenger Deep in the Mariana Trench. And Victor is the creator, sponsor, and submarine pilot for Conathan Oceanic, a private company dedicated to the advancement of undersea technology and supporting expeditions to increase the understanding of the ocean. His 5 Deeps mission, that he completed with Conathan in 2019, made him the first person to visit the 5 deepest points of the world's 5 ocean basins, which is a remarkable accomplishment in ocean science, and at the time, one of just a handful of people who had traveled to the deepest point in the global ocean, the Mariana Trench. And he and Conathan are currently midstream on their latest expedition around the Pacific Ring of Fire, as it's called. And so we'll hear a little bit more about his destinations and that work as we go on. And Dr. Kathryn Sullivan is a former NASA astronaut, US Navy oceanographer, and also the former head of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, which she ran under President Barack Obama through the end of his term in 2016. And during one of her 3 space shuttle missions, which she flew, she became the first American woman to walk in space, and on that mission helped to launch the Hubble telescope, the iconic space exploration tool that's still obviously very much in operation today, and something that she talks about extensively in her new book, Handprints on Hubble, which just came out earlier this year as well. So congratulations on the book launch, as well as the latest accomplishment in the trench. And that dive that she and Victor took just a few days ago actually made her the first woman to go to the bottom of the Mariana Trench, to the deepest point in the global ocean. So real pioneer in both fields of space exploration and ocean exploration. And I understand that one of the first things you did upon returning to the surface after your dive was to hop on the phone and call the International Space Station. And I'm just curious what that conversation was and what you all talked about on the brief call, and specifically, Kathy, whether you took the opportunity to kind of rub it in a little bit and reestablish some events that other folks in space haven't been able to do.
Well, it had nothing to do with rubbing it in. It just was, I had just been to the bottom of the ocean in an extraordinary submarine that Victor sponsored and funded, that Trident submarines had built. It's the first time we have a submersible that can go repeatedly, reusably, to any depth in any ocean that you want. In the course of this expedition, we've been at sea over the Marianas Trench for 1 week. From one Sunday to the next Sunday, this submersible with Victor at the helm went down to the Marianas Trench 3 times. If you look back at history, 52 years elapsed between the first time and the second time that humans went to the bottom of the Marianas Trench. In the space of 1 week, we sent people there 3 times. And what struck me was Doug Hurley and Bob Behnken had just flown to the space station in a privately funded, it's drawing on earlier technology. It's not all created a new cloth, but an innovative new craft, privately funded, aimed at making access to low Earth orbit much more frequent and much less expensive And here we were going in the other direction 3 times in a week. That contrast, that comparison, highs and lows, private investment, private innovation, really superb engineering. That's what struck me, and I happen to know Benken's wife, Megan MacArthur, another astronaut oceanographer, quite well. So I just thought it would be probably amusing for both of us on both ends of the conversation to compare notes from the highs and the lows, and about this wave of innovation that's coming in from private sector actors into both space frontiers and ocean frontiers. And that's really what we talked about. We were patting each other on the back and saluting each other for the accomplishment, each in both our dimensions.
And both of us complaining just a little bit about niggling issues that have to do with water and electricity.
Yeah.
Every vessel, whether it's a spacecraft or a submarine, has to deal with that.
Yeah.
So a little commiseration as well. It was fun.
Yeah, you can't build something that will go to those extremes without having to tend it very carefully and knowing the harsh environment you're in is pecking away at your craft all the time you're there. And our dive was cut short, a little shorter than we had planned, with some electrical issues. And the guys on the space station know all about electrical issues.
Yeah, no doubt, no doubt. The complications of both of those, most extreme environments are really difficult. And Victor, I've heard you talk in the past about how anytime you're planning a vessel to operate in the ocean, and particularly the deep ocean, the cost and engineering complications just go up exponentially as you go down. So I understand that that's an incredibly difficult thing.
Yeah, we're dealing with 8 tons of pressure per square inch. Like, imagine, half a container on your fingernail, and it's salt water, which definitely does not play well with electronics. And so we're just dealing with an immensely corrosive and harsh environment, maybe even worse than space by some metrics.
Well, so Kathy, Victor, I understand you've been down to the trench several times before, but Kathy, what were your first impressions of the trench and this amount of deep ocean exploration? How does going 7 miles down compare to going 254 miles up where the space station's orbiting now?
Well, I would highlight one commonality, one really stark difference, and then talk about the trench itself. The commonality is how extraordinary it is, again, thanks to ingenuity and engineering, how extraordinary it is to be able to sit in a container, a small container, quite small in the case of the submarine, dressed as I am, as comfortable as I am, and yet be in such a harsh, exotic, extreme environment. It's just, that just is an amazing experience to feel so natural being there and have such a wild, crazy environment right outside that window. The biggest difference to me is the scale of the view. When you're up above the Earth and you're looking through the vacuum of space and the atmosphere, you have 1,000-mile horizon in every direction. It's this gorgeously illuminated scene on the bright side of the Earth, and it's this sort of magically wonderful night scene on the back side of the Earth. When you go down in a submersible below about 500 meters at best, it's seriously, truly black. There are no photons there. So when you get to whatever depth your bottom is at, all you can see is the little sphere of light that your own lights illuminate. And I would guess it's maybe 30 feet, 20 or 30 feet.
Yeah.
Limiting factor, the name of the Victor submersible has a huge and powerful bank of lights, but still you've just got this very confined field of view. The trench itself, we landed in a sort of sediment-covered section, a fairly flat section of the trench floor. I mean, that one plate is diving under the other. It strikes you as a bit odd that where you land can look so peaceful and flat, but sedimentation will even things in. And the main impression I had on our traverse was it was like flying over a moonscape. There were small signs, little pockets, little hillocks and mounds on the bottom, occasionally a little linear track that we've not looked at all the detailed video yet, but certainly said there's life down there, small life forms, and not an abundance of life because there's not an abundance of food. So you're flying over basically a living moonscape in this crazy exotic place. The second dive that Victor did with Vanessa O'Brien was a similar kind of landscape. And the third dive completed yesterday.
This is going to be news to Kathy live, but we just looked at some of the video from our dive yesterday, the third one we've done this week. And one of our landers actually has film now of a creature coming out of the bottom of the ocean and swimming up to the camera. We've never seen a creature do that, and it's nothing I've ever seen at the bottom of the Mariana Trench. So we're really looking forward to publishing a picture of it and the film very shortly. But once again, nature continues to surprise us. And I will echo really quickly what Kathy said. The fact that when you go down to the deep ocean, it is like she said, all you can see is just what's immediately around you, a lot like our experience as human beings. But Kathy has been in this space and seen the entire globe of humanity. And it's an interesting bridge for me to just hear her speak and say, that's kind of the human experience. We're so atomized and we just see what's immediately around us, but at the same time, we want to have the vision and the feeling of being connected to everything. And I think it's a wonderful message that she can communicate because she has physically done both.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I want to see that picture.
Yeah, I do too. I'm not, hopefully we can.
Also, I'll throw in for good measure that we also went to the edge of the basin and we actually saw for the first time vivid golden bacterial mats on rocks in the Challenger Deep. They're brilliant gold, and we have beautiful imagery of that as well, which we'd never seen before either. And we only saw previously at the Sirena Deep about 200 miles to the northeast, but now we've confirmed that it's now in multiple deep oceans. So we are doing real exploration and scientific discovery on these missions.
Wow.
And on the third dive yesterday, at the edge of the basin, wonderful, looked like columnar basalt. I mean, toppled up and jumbled, but column-shaped, bouldery outcrops, canyons, sharp walls. I've been teasing Victor since they got back last night that he took the geologist on the wrong dive.
You never know what you're going to get on these dives.
That's right.
Yeah. Well, and that's part of the mystery of knowing as little as we do about the bottom of the ocean. You can't really pinpoint that until you can build a submersible big enough to bring the whole crew down. Right? So, tough to do at that depth.
That'll be a trick.
And that was going to be one of my follow-ups to you, Victor, was given that you have been to the deepest points of each of the ocean basins, are there, and still recognizing that it's just sort of a one snapshot or a very small number of snapshots of these places, do you recognize differences in the deep ocean of the different ocean basins, or
absolutely.
are they? Yeah.
Now, each one has its own personality. Unfortunately, the Puerto Rican Trench, the first major deep that I did, 8,000 meters, we saw the most human contamination of any deep there. And that's because it was used as a dumping ground back in the 70s, unfortunately. The Southern Ocean and the Arctic Ocean, the Malloy Deep, they were very rocky. And they had a lot more wildlife because they were shallower. They were at 6,000 or 7,000 meters and very different in character. And then there was the Tonga Trench, which was incredibly violent. Just so many rocks thrown haphazard because of the tectonic plates crashing into each other. The Mariana Trench is much more peaceful, where it's older, has a lot more sediment, but it also has these new discoveries. So each one is kind of unique in its own way, and that's what we were hoping to discover. Are they all the same, or are they all different? Either thing that we discover would be interesting.
Yeah, and that's fantastic. I mean, and it sort of speaks to the need for us to really be, I think, pursuing additional ocean exploration missions, such as the ones that you're setting up through Conathan, and obviously, Kathy, what the NOAA and other global agencies and ocean exploration agencies have been pursuing. And it kind of brings me to another sort of question that I've noticed, and that is that, why do we, obviously there are technical challenges for why the ocean has remained relatively unexplored as opposed to space. We have this in the ocean community, we sort of have this old trope of, we have better maps of the surface of Mars and the surface of the moon, or higher quality maps than we do of the deep ocean floor. And there are some physical reasons for that. But how are you and Conathan and others sort of hoping to change that dynamic? And what are the techniques that you're using to try to close that gap and solve some of those mysteries?
Well, at the end of the day, it's about resources. And one of the things that drove me to go to the bottom of all 5 oceans was the fact I thought it needed to be done. And I knew the technology existed because James Cameron and the Trieste had done it previously. It was a matter of simply having the will and the resources, which I did personally 100%, to make it happen. And I had to invest in the most advanced sonar ever put on the civilian ocean so we could pinpoint where we were going. It was about designing and perfecting the submersible. It really is a matter of will and dollars and providing a specific objective. And with pretty much single-minded focus, that's what I've done for the last 4 years and made it happen. And I'm hoping that it's just opening the door so that others can see that with the right determination and resources, we can make the oceans a little bit more visible. It's just a question of will.
Yeah, and that's something that I've explored a little bit in the past in my previous work, I was with the Center for American Progress, and I did just a brief analysis, not anything terribly in depth, but looking at the relative exploration budgets of NASA versus NOAA. And the sort of back of the envelope that we came out with on that was that for every dollar that NOAA spends on ocean exploration, NASA is spending $150 on space exploration.
Well, we've actually, my scientists and I have talked about this, and there's a bit of a psychological element. Human beings are born with a fear of drowning. We are afraid of deep, dark, cold places instinctively. And space is so romantic and sexy, rockets and spaceships and Star Wars. And so there's a natural gravity to want to go into space as opposed into the deep, dark, cold oceans where things are a little bit scary. But there's so much to discover about life, about chemical processes, about biology and geology in the oceans that we have to graduate from what is sexy and cool to what is truly useful. And I think a lot of people understand more and more that the oceans have far more to teach us right now than maybe the space exploration.
And Mike, as you know, the other dimension there is the legislative, the public policy dimension. NASA space came about at a point in time. NASA was given in established legislative language a specific goal. And the specific goal was actually not go to the moon. It was inspire and give confidence to the American people in the prowess of American technology and American capability. So space was a demonstration arena as much for the American public as it was for our adversaries to show American competency and capability and vision and will, as Victor said. And if we ever gave that charge in public policy to ocean exploration, it would surely rise to the challenge just as well. It would overcome those sexy, scary dimensions. That Victor's exactly right. They're very human. Read the Odyssey. It's Homer's cold, gray, fish-bearing sea. There's sort of a little leave me alone kind of dimension that can be overcome. And an agent, if NOAA were given that similar kind of charge and the resources to do it, the ocean would mesmerize and attract everyone.
Yeah, one other real quick point is the fact that when I started researching this mission, I discovered the deepest diving submersible in the world was actually the Chinese, Jiaoling. And as a Texan and as an American
and a naval officer,
that's stuck in me a little bit. And I took it upon myself to change that, because I think the United States should lead in technology in all facets, space as well as ocean, as well as anything else. And if the government isn't going to do it, then sometimes it's the requirement of private citizens to do it. That's what makes us, I think, American in many ways.
Well, thank you for taking up that challenge. I mean, we obviously have that as well in Arctic exploration. If you look at the icebreaker fleets around the world, ours pales in comparison to what China and Russia in particular have. And of course, with climate change opening that frontier, that's a huge new space where we're going to need to operate.
Mike, what you said just triggers another thought in me. When I was head of NOAA, one of the dimensions of Arctic policy that I came to appreciate, hadn't really thought about before. In the United States, Arctic issues are seen to be Alaskan issues. They're the issues that pertain to one state. And so it's easy to say, well, I live in Texas or Ohio or somewhere else. No, Arctic doesn't bother me. The reality of this planet is we all are Arctic nations and we all are ocean nations. The space is above all our heads. We all see the stars. We all see the sun go overhead. We all see the moon. You can't escape the fact that you're on a spaceship Earth, but you can live in an interior of a country and avoid the fact that you're on an ocean planet. And that's another dimension of, does this pertain to you? Well, I live in Nebraska, so no. That's dead wrong. The ocean absolutely pertains to you, and the Arctic pertains to you. But you don't have that awareness. You don't have that direct feeling of it that you would if you were walking on the Jersey Shore or a California beach.
Well, that's absolutely right. And as somebody who's representing an ocean program within an organization that's based, in Aspen, Colorado, several thousand feet above sea level, and several thousand miles or 1,000 miles from the nearest coastline, we do go through that dynamic in that conversation quite a bit when we present out in Aspen. But it's always a conversation that I welcome, because people do need to understand that, and they it clicks very quickly once you kind of make some of those connections. Yep. And similarly, residing in Maine, we prioritize Arctic issues quite a bit as well. Our representatives have done a good job job there and partnered quite a bit with Alaska. But again, that's absolutely right. You know, Arctic issues, ocean issues, Antarctic issues are truly universal. So it's an important perspective. And in terms of sort of thinking about how we can take a little more advantage of the work that you, Victor, and Kathy as well are doing throughout the ocean exploration and ocean observation landscape. Curious to get your perspective on how the world should be prioritizing exploration and observation. What are the innovations that are helping us close this knowledge gap? And what is the importance of having humans actually going to these places as opposed to sending autonomous vehicles to make the same innovations? Or can they make the same innovations?
Well, I'll take a shot to start with on the latter point. As a scientist and an explorer at heart, if you know the data you want to have, we certainly nowadays can create very capable robotic or semi-autonomous instruments and packages that can go get you the data you knew you wanted to have. For me, that's not exploration. That's filling in a known knowledge gap. In the ocean, in the deep sea, there are so many places that we know so little about. We should be humble and honest enough to admit we don't know what question we should be asking. We don't have really any way to understand what gaps of knowledge we should be trying to fill in. So I don't know how to program a robotic package. Is telepresence a good thing, a valuable thing? I sort of project myself there without physically going there. I think that's a very valuable bridge to the unknown in many instances. But, if you don't think there's something special about going there yourself and fully understanding the environment and what it takes to be there, seeing the things in your peripheral vision you didn't know to expect, if you don't think that's true about the ocean, then I want you to tell me why it mattered you were at your kid's wedding instead of just looked at pictures.
Yeah, there's something very much to be said for the direct experience of humans being in these locations. Robots and autonomous vehicles are fantastic, but there's nothing like human interaction, not just in the practical sense that Kathy mentioned, but also being able to communicate it.
Yes.
We were there. We can communicate those stories to inspire interest. And that goes to the earlier comment that you have to have the will to get funding, to get objectives set, to go and make these explorations. And it seems that, robots don't do that quite as well as people standing on the stage saying, hey, look what I just did and look what I found. James Cameron had a wonderful quote, I thought, he said, whoever grew up wanting to become a robot? But I guarantee you they grew up wanting to be an explorer. And I think that was his point. And the other issue that I will make, and it's a real one, is the fact that remotely operated vehicles to go to the deepest points of our oceans require 4 to 5 miles of tether connected. And where do those tethers go? And they can break and they can cause issues. We lost the Nereus many years ago for unknown reasons. It was on a tether. And I will confess right now, just yesterday, I was on the bottom of the Mariana Trench, and I'm pretty sure that I saw the yellow cable of the Nereus on the bottom of the Mariana Trench, which has to be cut whenever it surfaces. So in the exploration, they're leaving permanent records of their visits that a manned submersible doesn't really do, other than some drop weights that degrade because they're just metal. So there's advantages and disadvantages to both. But like so much of the human experience, human beings are at their best when they're augmented by these other systems. It's not an either or, it's a both.
Don Walsh, who piloted Trieste in the first dive to Mariana's Trench, Challenger Deep in 1960, a companion quote to James Cameron: no one ever threw a ticker tape parade for a robot.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Not yet. Yeah.
Someday the robot overlords will throw ticker tape parades for themselves, but fortunately we're not there yet.
Yeah.
So we've got that.
That's possible.
Yeah. I don't know that they'll find that a good use of their time. Who can say? But in terms of so it clearly, I appreciate that. I think there's incredible value in that personal connection. That we are human creatures and we must have personal emotional connections that by definition we can't get from autonomy. At the same time, there's so much ground to cover, and the challenges, and not that the challenges are light of doing autonomous, as you pointed out, but there are additional challenges to doing it. So is there something, Kathy, obviously Hubble is one example. It is a remarkable tool that has now existed and been improved upon and enhanced over the last, what is it, about 35 years that it's been
30 years.
30 years that it's been in orbit. And we're clearly still one of our greatest assets. Is there something that we could conceive of? Is there a Hubble for the oceans that we should be pursuing, or should that be a kind of a moonshot project that NOAA or other agencies should be working on? Or are we better served by kind of looking for multiple solutions, given the differences of the environmental conditions?
Yeah, I think it's very much a multiple solution problem, and the ocean is so vast. And something that's underappreciated about the work that Victor's company Conathan has been doing is a parallel to me. The point that you're making, everyone's focusing on the drama and the amazing accomplishment of going personally to the deeps. That's great. But in the course of the 5 deeps and then our expedition and on through the next couple months, this vessel, the pressure drop, is also doing very detailed seafloor mapping of a level of detail beyond what's been in existence before. And they're coming close to, if they haven't already passed, 1 million square miles of mapping in the span of about kilometers, in the span of about 18 months, which exceeds by a factor of 10 at least the annual productivity of the federal and governmental agencies that have been doing this work. So you're getting both. You're getting that broad reconnaissance sweep and more detailed knowledge of the shape of the ocean basins and the localities in the world's ocean, as well as the pinpoints of the submersible dives that Victor's been doing in all the deep points.
It's really 3 things. We're doing extensive deep water mapping with the most advanced sonar that's on a civilian ship. Plus there's the submersible to do the most interesting things, which is where the humans should go. But we've also did last year over 100 deployments of full ocean depth landers that have their own cameras, soil samplers, biological captures, and those have actually yielded far more science, frankly, than the submersible dives. So you can see the combination of systems will allow us to explore the whole ocean. But what is really needed is extensivity. We just need more. The ocean is so huge. It's not about just one great ship or one great sub that can answer these questions. It's like discovering North America for the first time. We need a lot of systems and explorers to find out what's going on. And that's why I respect the JEBCO initiative, which is just trying to map the whole seafloor in 10 years. But that's their thing, and they're using a whole swath of technologies and people and resources to do that. It has to be a group effort.
Yeah, so it really is an all hands kind of operation, and so I appreciate that perspective as well. I think that's really important.
And so, Mike, if it's not in your notes and in your talking points, I would really encourage you to bring out forcefully. Victor's not just funded a ship and funded a submersible and gone deep. He's really built around this effort a very respectable and good bench strength science team. So Dr. Alan Jameson from the University of Newcastle has really been leading the effort, setting the science program with these landers. And as Victor mentioned earlier in the call, it's one of the landers on this last dive that captured the footage of the critter. So there's the happenstance of where the people went. The lander's down just as long as the sub and just sitting one place to watch. So you have both stationarity, watching what's just right in one place, and you have some traverse through the feature, and the combination becomes very powerful.
Yeah, what appears what happened is the robot lander landed, and because of its disturbing of the seafloor, it caused the creature to come out of its burrow and come up, something the submarine wouldn't have caused it to do. So again, that's a perfect example of how the different systems can symbiotically create more discoveries.
Yeah, that's fantastic. I can't wait to see the footage of the creature.
It's cool.
The image. It's,
it's really cool.
Yeah. That's amazing. And it seems like every time there's a trip to the deep ocean, because we know so little about it, we come back with more of these amazing discoveries. So, and hopefully that just continues to drive the kind of excitement. People go to space looking for aliens. We find them in the deep ocean. So we've got to get in there and really really fuel that exploratory vibe. And to do that, I think it's really important that we have the full spectrum of representation. And, I think it's such a significant milestone that we have, finally some gender diversity in the deepest ocean exploration. Obviously there have been pioneering female ocean scientists throughout the course of ocean exploration history. But this is a significant milestone and something that, particularly in light of recent events taking place around the U.S. and other countries, really raising the profile of issues of sort of diversity and inclusion in all aspects of society. And Kathy, you obviously were a pioneer in your field in space. You are now a pioneer and have been a pioneer in the fields of ocean exploration. So I'm curious what that experience means to you, and if you have any perspective to kind of share on what's happening currently and the societal issues that are coming to the fore, and how we can ensure that there are additional opportunities for all representation in the ocean science and exploration communities.
Yeah, it's human beings are complex critters. I think at the root level, you either look at the human species as all of us together, one species, one planet, and that's certainly the way I was raised, the philosophy I grew up with. It definitely was reinforced by orbiting the Earth every 90 minutes. And we all together inhabit one little beach ball, one little pale blue marble, as Carl Sagan put it. So we're all in this together, and it is the common property, the common home of all of mankind. That's sort of how I look at life, the universe, and everything, if you will. But the structures and systems we set up here on Earth are very often, intentionally or otherwise, they embed lines, they embed differences. Who gets to lead, who gets to do different jobs. We've got to find ways to grow beyond that, to graduate from that sort of structure into one that really does include and allow and enable any human being to take on a life, a path, a field of work that they want, and to really extend their capabilities to the max, to the fullest, become the leader, whatever scale of leader they have within them. So what I hope to do to take advantage of the experience that I've had here this week, just as I've done in my astronaut career, is use the platform, use the cachet, use the interest hook that these novel experiences provide, and try to share that with others to encourage young people of all races and genders to see the explorer in themselves and to bring that out and to learn how to use that exploring muscle to help teachers improve the ways that they can guide students through classwork, so that it's less about schooling and more really about education and development to realize the full potential of the young people that are in their classes, and policymakers. I mean, it again, like we were saying about exploration itself, it takes all actors and multiple tools. I think really making life on this earth and exploration of the oceans and all of everybody reality will take policy, it will take leadership, it will take government action, it will take private action, and it takes individual action. It takes each of us, wherever we are, being that inclusive, welcoming, and supportive human being to the other humans around us.
Great. Well, I think that's really vital, and I'm glad to hear that, and I'm not surprised to hear that you'll be using your platform for trying to bring more people into the fold and taking this message forward. The ocean is our lifeblood, and it's something that we have to all be working together to recognize the contributions, recognize the costs that we've inflicted and the damage that we've inflicted on the ocean, and figure out how to rectify some of that and ensure that it remains as an entity, as a healthy entity, as a functioning set of ecosystems to maintain the functioning set of ecosystems on our planet. So Victor, I think this was the first series of dives in your Ring of Fire expedition. What's next, and what are you want to talk a little bit about your goals for this round of dives and for your expedition at large?
Sure. We're headed back to Guam to resupply a little bit, get some other personnel. We're going to go back to the Challenger Deep. I'm very hopeful to take down the son of Don Walsh, the first person at the bottom of the Mariana Trench, to the same place his father went to 60 years ago, and maybe even try and find where the Trieste was, and just continue our explorations of the Challenger Deep to basically, in my own mind, comprehensively explore all areas of it in a way that's never been done before, because we're extensively surveying it, studying it, where all previous expeditions have been kind of just pinpoint down and back kind of things. And we're out here for a while. After that, we're actually going to explore the northern arc of the Mariana Trench, a very unexplored area with deeps that are almost as deep as the Challenger. And my scientific team is extremely excited about seeing what similarities or differences are there, both geologically, marine biology speaking, and all these other things. So that'll be a very intensive, purely scientific episode of about 10 or 12 days and a lot of dives with them. And then finally, we'll wrap it up off the Philippine Trench, where we're going to try and dive for the first time into the Emden Deep, and the only other, we believe, 10,000 meter trench in the world, and see if it's different or similar or what we see, not just with the sub, but with the landers. And then finally, we hope to explore the battlefield off the Samar Island off the Philippines, which may become the deepest wreck dive in history, just to show that the vessel doesn't necessarily just have to be used for science, it can also be used for archaeology. If there are things on the seafloor that we want to go find, retrieve, or investigate, it's a multi-purpose tool. And as a intensive military historian buff and formal naval officer, it's in the neighborhood. I want to go and I'm going to do it.
Great. Excellent. Admirable goals for sure. Kathy, next steps for you as you're headed home, I think, from Guam, if I'm not mistaken. And what does that bring?
I'm headed back to my home in Ohio. Make sure the house and the puppies stayed intact while I was gone. I'm retired from an everyday job nowadays, so I've got the time and the space to really let myself absorb this experience more fully, take a closer look at all the video and imagery that I got and the professional team that Victor has aboard, and put together the ways that I can share that. Looking at particularly working through the Monterey Bay Aquarium and the Center of Science and Industry, COSI in Columbus, which I led for 10 years. Both of those institutions are powerful nodes in the network of public science centers and aquaria. So my goal is to partner with them so that they could be sort of amplifiers and multipliers, give me a more powerful platform than I can do on my own 2 feet just traveling around.
Excellent. So what is it about the water in Ohio that generates so many astronauts? John Glenn, Neil Armstrong, you guys are all from Ohio.
Well, yeah, the joke about Ohio is it's a place that makes people passionately want to go somewhere else. But it's a great place to live.
Yeah, yeah. I want to thank you both so much for taking the time to talk with me and to fill us in on your latest fascinating mission, and particularly a shipboard video chat as you're steaming back to Guam. Is a remarkable technological achievement of its own, and I'm glad we were able to pull it off with I think without too many glitches in the conversation. So clearly we're doing something right, and you guys are definitely doing something right. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much.
Pleasure to talk with you again, Mike.
Take care.